Welcome to Hello Grow, another episode. Quick introduction of Lonny James. 8 years ago, you started Bunny James, and within that 8 years, you've been on Good Morning Utah, Your Life Arizona, KSL, Fox News, ABC, CBS, a bunch of other places. You acquired another company, became a husband, and now a father to one. Stoked to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, you forgot to mention that you're probably the person that lived in most states that I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, I've definitely lived in a few. Chicago, well, it's not a state, but I lived in Chicago, Maryland, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Utah now, and then before that it was California, and then I went to school in Arizona.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Sun Devil went to ASU. It's a good school.
So you've been classic entrepreneur. Any research I've done on you, plus since I've known you, all of our conversations have been around entrepreneurship and growth. So I figure you're the perfect person for the podcast. And I know in my own journey, there's been these moments of what I call fetal position in the shower moments. So we're just going to dive right in to exactly what the people want to hear. Let's start with that. You've had this 8-year journey. Tell us one or two of those crying in the shower moments that you thought, well, I'll just call it that.
Wow, that's such a good question because I guess if you want to be an entrepreneur, get ready for those, right? But they still happen. So I don't think that that's like my life has changed in that sense where those things don't happen. But there's definitely a few kind of hurdles. Like I believe that the best things in our lives happen after those moments. And I'm so happy that I didn't quit in those moments. But one specifically that really sticks out is I had in our warehouse in Utah, we have an operation there and we have camera set up. And then one dinged at a weird time, on the application, and I logged into it. And at that moment, 3 really important people in the company I saw that they were talking, and normally I wouldn't check in, but it was like a weird time. It was like weird that they were all in that one area, not where they normally were. And it was 2.5 hours of them talking about how big of a piece of shit I was. And man, that was crushing. I think as an entrepreneur, there are some really dark times, and probably a lot of entrepreneurs can relate with this, but maybe wouldn't say it, that you don't know your reason for living anymore because you've gotten yourself into a situation that you can't figure out how to get out of. And that was one of those. I remember just collapsing to my knees, and I just felt the tears roll down my face, and my wife walked in. She thought I was having a fucking heart attack or something, And, hearing that was worse than all of the financial situations, all of the almost going out of business, but to hear people who you care about so much and they don't really know what you're doing on the back end to try to make sure they have jobs and keep the whole house afloat and all of those personal liabilities that employees don't know about. But to have those people that I trusted and thought loved the company and enjoyed working there, just to hear the truth was a really bottom scenario. And the learnings from it were 2 things. One, there was some of what they were saying that was right. Right? So that's the first thing you have to do is okay, what's true? So there were a lot of things that I found out that I needed to work on. I already knew I had a bunch, but some that I wasn't aware of. And then there was the second part of it, which is who has a corporate job and doesn't bitch about their boss? And that's what helped me move through those things. And the only reason I came to those was because I have a incredible support network. At the time, I had a rock star business coach I called my other partners in the business and broke down, and I spend more money on therapy and personal development than anyone you know. So like I had the support, but without that support, I don't know if I would have come to those two conclusions. So that was one of them. I don't know if you want to hear about it.
Yeah, we do want to hear more. How far into the business were you when that happened?
That was 2022.
So this is recent. This is a year ago.
Yeah, like probably like 18 months ago. Yeah.
Are those people still in the company?
They are not.
How did Polly respond? So she's hearing this too while you're going through it, or she comes in at the end?
Yeah. So Polly's my wife.
Yeah.
And I think I was hyperventilating, like that type of breathing, and I think she heard it, and she just came and put her arms around me, and I'm so lucky that I have an incredible partner, because that helps to have someone there who's going to support you when you're about to go bankrupt, and is going to support you when you're getting your third year on the Inc. 5000. And she's indifferent to the business shit, right? Like she cares about me, so she could care less whether I had a corporate job or whether I was building this business or whether we had $1 million in our bank account or we had zero. As long as like we're doing good and we're able to get by and have a family, she's incredible. So I got lucky with her.
I don't think it's just lucky. I thought about it in my own business life. If I didn't have Courtney, there's no way. I thought I need to postpone getting married because I need to focus on my business. And the opposite was true. I became so much more grounded and so much better at business. Once I had that grounding and the support at home and had that worked out, I felt like I was able to take off a business, especially somebody that's similar to Polly, doesn't care about the results, will allow me to fail and take risks, but just wants me to be happy in the pursuit of whatever it is that I want to do.
I was watching a guy talk about that the other day. He said the likelihood of people who get married early and have kids before they can afford, the likelihood of them not succeeding, only like 8% of those people actually don't succeed in life, like don't find a way through life to be in a good financial position, but also be successful. So I think it just creates that chip on the shoulder, and just like you have someone that you need to bring, food, put a food on the table, but you have someone expecting but relying on you. But Lonny, I'd love to hear more. Like, what are some, looking back, how long have you been married now?
A little over 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Do you see, and together, how long have you guys been together?
About 8.
About 8?
Yeah.
Same for me and my wife, 8 years together. Can you think about maybe one or two things that happened, turned out good for you because she was there and because she existed?
There's probably so many. I mean, being the first being that we just had our first child. And obviously if I was by myself,
It wouldn't have happened.
That would
be a little more tricky.
That wouldn't have happened, or it would have been a severe accident, and she's turned out to be an incredible mom. But on the aspect of maybe something that's like more relatable to business is like, we built this business. We did our first $1 million in a storage unit, a 10 by 10 storage unit, like smaller than this room.
Wow.
Yeah. And we needed to obviously upgrade, one for quality assurance reasons, because shipping food out of a storage unit is not a good idea, but like two, just for growth of the business. And we needed to move we were doing some fulfillment out here in Utah. They were like, this is too complex. There's a warehouse opening up next door. Maybe you should move in. And she had already moved to California for me, and I was pretty hesitant about asking her to move again. And so I brought her here. We kind of looked around. My wife's a nurse. And she just looked at me and she was like, this is what we need to do. Let's do it. And so for me, someone who like probably would have second-guessed that decision to death, because I was leaving my corporate job. Because I started the business while having a job. I was leaving my corporate job. I was going to a new state. I was taking out liability on a warehouse. But for someone just to be like, this is what we need to do, and to have that person be my partner and know that like we're in this together was huge.
Tell me about the jump. I've heard this, but I want everyone else to hear how you went from your corporate job and how that evolved into what you guys are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked at a really large company called UNFI. You can Google it. They're the largest food distributor in the country. And my job at that company was to manage key accounts, which are like big retail chains. Like here in Utah, it's Harmon's or Kroger or Whole Foods or Sprouts. And we sold at that time kind of the healthy and natural products that go into those stores. Now UNFI has acquired so many companies that they sell pretty much the whole grocery store to a grocery store. And so I got in touch with all of these cool brands, and I always wanted to build something. So on the side, I initially first emailed UNFI and I was like, hey, I know I work for you, but I want to start these natural organic vending machines and open up an account with UNFI and fill them. And they were like, absolutely not, no way. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going to do it anyway. And so I had a bunch of custom vending machines made. I placed them all over Los Angeles.
How did you fund that? Where'd you get the money?
From work. You know,
okay, so
like
you're taking your savings to buy custom vending machines?
Yes.
And how did you find a custom vending machine partner?
Just found them. Just searched, called people who I knew. Like, if you want something, you'll find it, you know? And so I built a whole vending machine route, and then instead of buying from UNFI, I just called all the brands that we worked with, and I said, will you ship it to my apartment? And they did. And so for a couple of years, I filled routes of vending machines. I'd work my corporate job during the day, and from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., I'd fill vending machines.
That
Law
is
firms,
awesome.
apartment complexes, all those types of things. And finally, my apartment complex said, we're going to evict you. Like, you can't have another pallet dropped off here. And
So what floor did you live on?
well, there were like, it was technically the first floor, but there were like 3 floors to get there, you know? And so there was a big stairway that at the time I lived with 8 people in a 2-bedroom apartment. We were broke. Everyone trying to be an entrepreneur. It was like a little incubator.
That is
and
so
I paid
cool.
all of them to help me carry the boxes up the stairs and then and then organize everything. And so it was my bed in a room and then surrounded by snacks. And then the apartment complex said, hey, we're gonna evict you.
Did you gain any weight having so many snacks?
No, I lost weight because I was carrying those freaking boxes. And then once they said that, that's when I was like, oh, there's a storage unit downstairs. So moved to the storage unit. And long story short, vending, in my opinion, is not a wonderful business model. And at that time, I met someone, my current partner now, and we started discussing, hey, maybe we can use these snacks and put them in cool gift boxes and sell them online. And we did more in an hour online than we did in a month with the whole vending route. So a year later, sold the vending route and pushed forward on the boxes.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. Have you always, and then that's a great opportunity for us to talk about Clear My Guilt. Have you always been an entrepreneur? Have you always wanted to start your own business?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, in high school, I probably did more illegal activity selling than I did legitimate, but I can't shy away from the truth. So I did always like running my own enterprise, but most importantly, I liked being creative. I liked building something that didn't exist. And when I went to college, I went to ASU. Really, in my opinion, great school, especially if you're trying to pick up on social skills and how to build relationships with people, which I think is super important. When I was there, I would hear conversations, like especially in the Greek life and different places, about things people had done and, like almost like unforgivable stuff. And there was this one particular guy where he had shared something so casually that he had done, and he was almost proud of it. And I was like, what would other people think if they just heard what you said? And I was like, that's it. I was like, there needs to be like a morality website that can crowdsource how people view what you've done to decide if it's forgivable, unforgivable, or somewhere in between. And so I found the wealthiest friend that I had, and I was like, look, this is what I want to do. Can you get the money to do it? And he could. And we launched, and we created clearmyguilt.com, which was an anonymous confessional, kind of like at church, right? You'd go in and you'd confess anonymously. We'd moderate it just to make sure it wasn't anything like murder or suicide. Things like that did come in that we had to moderate off. But it would then get posted, and people would either click unforgivable or forgivable. It would then rate them and separate them between heaven, hell, and limbo. And within like a few months,
genius.
Yeah, within a few months, like we had 100,000 users a day, and like serious traffic coming on. And I saw a Fox reporter on our campus, and I was like, I need to tell you about my business. She came over and interviewed us, and it just like a lot of affiliates picked it up. And, you know, we were on like Good Morning America, Australia. We were on Fox, CBS, all different types of things. And yeah, so it was a pretty cool
That is
first
incredible.
Yeah.
I was reading about that. I think I was looking you up on LinkedIn yesterday.
Yeah.
What was that feeling when you had 100K viewers, visitors? It was 100K visitors in one day, right?
Yeah.
That was the first.
Yeah, from all of the press that we had received. And
How did that feel?
Man, it was incredible. It broke the site. So it was pretty incredible. And that's when I was like, well, we need to build this into something, you know? We weren't able to do that, you know, stupid college kids prioritizing and not knowing how to properly advertise. And we had derogatory phrases, like people would comment things on the site, which at the time wouldn't allow us to use normal Google ads. And so it was either figure out or moderate the site more or use porn ads. And, you know, we didn't think the site would function properly with like Viagra pill ads on the right-hand corner. You know? So, but then long story short, like we ended up winding that down, and I took an internship in Washington, D.C. because I wanted to get into politics and let it fizzle out.
It's amazing.
Tell us about your why. You've had these moments that you thought, man, is it even worth going forward? Why did you keep going forward?
Well, I think it's changed over the years.
What was it and what is it now?
I mean, I think like initially it was maybe everyone was right about me. I had this internal story that like maybe I wasn't good enough. And I wanted to prove that I was, so maybe like an ego-focused why. And I think that'll only take you for so long. And then after you have some semblance of success, I think that's when it started to change for me of like, why am I really doing this? Because that, you know, that initial motivation starts to wear off as business gets hard, right? I think today is, I really believe in being of service to entrepreneurs and also people in recovery throughout the U.S., the world, wherever, and in any way that, you know, like I can show that that's possible, really keeps me going.
Tell me about that transition, because I feel like you're spot on, and that was a similar path for me of I want to prove to everyone else and to myself that I can be the person that can create this. And then you hit this benchmark, then you hit another benchmark, and then you hit a benchmark that you'd never thought when you first set out that I would ever be at. And then you realize that didn't bring any satisfaction. Like, no one actually cares. And to continue to the next stage, I need to figure out what my new why is to push forward, because it can't just be this financial target anymore. Can you talk a little bit about that transition?
Yeah, definitely. I think there is a realization for every entrepreneur out there that like, wait, people weren't waiting around to see how my life turned out. Like, it's an inner monologue, yeah. You know, it's fake. It's a conversation between me and my ego. And then when that happens, it's like, what now? You know, like, why am I doing this? And I think most people probably have so many, it changes frequently until you find the one that actually works for you. And I would say actually pain is the catalyst for what helped me understand my true why. Because like the one positive thing about pain and struggle and doing hard stuff is that it quickly leads you to a new paradox of thinking. Like rock bottoms, for example. Like once you're at the lowest place, like you can start to see things clearly. And that's when I was like, I needed a little bit more of a purpose, and I found mine.
And what is it now? Or is that too personal to share in a podcast?
No, that's what it was, kind of what I shared earlier, which was being of service to entrepreneurs and people in recovery. And because I resonate with both of those two groups of people. And in my opinion, we only keep what we have really by giving it away, once we have it. And the satisfaction of helping another entrepreneur who's maybe currently in a place that I've already been is huge, because other entrepreneurs helped me during those times. And that's what pulled me through it, right? So the gift is actually the helping, because that's when I get fired up again, when I can help someone through some of those places that I had to navigate alone. And being an entrepreneur is a lonely place to be unless you create a life where it's not.
We have a hoodie for you that says on the back, "Heavy is the head that wears the crown." So you'll be able to wear that around.
Yeah. And most entrepreneurs would respond to that, say, "What crown?"
Yeah, well, someone else is wearing it.
Yeah.
2.5 hours of hearing about how terrible you are.
Yeah.
That's the crown.
Tell me about you're a dad now.
Yeah.
Plus, it's your busiest. You told us that you're shipping 40 or 50,000 gift boxes this month, and you have a 6-week-old at home. Tell us a little bit about the balance of how you're filling both of those responsibilities.
It's a good question. I think I'm a firm believer in doing the best that I can, which is a simple way to look at life. Because if I do the best that I can today, like I've accomplished today, and as more and more things pile onto the plate, sometimes that's the only option, right? Sometimes the best that I can do today is, because it's so intense, is to not do anything. And that might just be locking myself in a room because I have nothing good to say to anybody. I can't be of service. I can't help. And what I can do today is not cause damage. Because when I'm acting out of a place of like fear and scarcity and those types of things, anything that I touch crumbles. But then, when that passes, my level of what I can complete and accomplish in a day could be extremely high, right? And so I think having some grace in those moments as a leader is really important in accomplishing a lot, because like I try to move in seasons, right? Like sometimes maybe other people can relate with this, like getting stuff done is super simple, right? Like I'm on it, I want to work, I'm motivated. And then other times we need to slow down a little bit. And I think going with that natural energy that we have in life and slowing down when we need to and speeding up when we have the ability is how we can get the most out of all of the things that we need to cover. And I think that works the same no matter if you have a little bit on your plate or a lot on your plate, whether you're a dad and a business owner and kind of all of those things that go with it. So I think my answer to that is doing the best I can. I think that would contradict to some people's belief in like discipline, right? Like no matter what, I'm doing this today, but I don't believe in that. I would rather take a step back for a sec and produce something that is quality and thoughtful and rather than just some shit because I got it done for the day and I was mean to everyone who was around me, and I've torn down my team. And like, I think it's really important as a leader to be careful about your actions and what you say.
You can tell me if I'm way off on this, but I feel like so I've known you, when we met when we were flyboarding, when we were doing the Ironman.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
That water jet propulsion thing. That was awesome.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's been this evolution over the last. I feel like you're a different person in some regards than when I met you. And I think so many people are going through this unbelievably difficult situation, whether that's starting a business or a family situation or health thing, whatever it is. What are some of the structures or habits or mindsets that have been your catalyst for this change and this continued like grounding? You're unbelievably grounded.
It's good to hear. It's not always like that. I probably have a more in-depth mindfulness practice than most because I need it. I feel like most people start at square one, and just how I was raised and where I came from, like I started at -20. I wake up in the morning and life isn't sparkly and wonderful. And so it takes me a while to get to a place where I'm in a place of abundance and kindness and those types of things. Because the moment that I wake up, I'm like a born problem solver. So I see immediately the problems, what people didn't do right, what's wrong, just like a lot of negative, right? Which is great in some areas of my life, but for the most part, it's not. And so my practice is really important to me. And so when I wake up in the morning, usually my initial start to the day is just moving the body. Like I gotta move the body, whether that's the gym or walk the dog or something to get the body moving. And then I have to take care of my mind. And that's done in a couple ways, and I change it over time. But it's usually I've got a meditation practice, and then I like to read some like enlightening positive literature. I really don't care what it is, right? Just something that's going to put a message in my brain that things are going to be all right. Just like a reminder. Right now, I'm just wrapping up The Power of Now. I'm also reading Goals by Brian Tracy, which I've read a bunch of times, right? Just something to kind of get that moving. And, do a quick little gratitude list because that's important to me as well. And I start my day and I stay heavily caffeinated through the rest of the day until about 5 o'clock. So that's usually my practice. And, I would say, and then I have something that I do before I go to bed. So I would say I at least spend an hour a day at minimum practicing mindfulness, which looks very different depending on who you are and what you need.
Do you have any anti-habits, things that you do not allow to be part of your life?
That's a really good question. Yeah, a few. I think a toxic habit is gossip, talking about other people, things that one wouldn't say to someone directly. I think that causes so much damage in people's lives that they don't know about. So that's a big one for me, is like, you can assume that if you know me, I'm not talking about you when you're not around. And if I am, it's in a positive light. Or professionally, it may be like a review or something like that, which is totally different because that's professionally and you have to do those types of things. So I just don't believe in that. And then the second thing, the hardest thing for me is like, how do I stop the negative thoughts, right? And I have to practice counteracting negative thoughts with positive thoughts. All right, what's the good side of this? What's the positive side of this? And so when I feel myself going into that negative thinking, I have to take action. I can't think my way out of it. Like if it's really bad, like I need to go for a run. I need to express that. Or sometimes it's even like, I just need to identify with my feelings. Or I need to get quiet for a sec. Why am I feeling this way? Like, what is this touching? Is it touching that inner monologue that I'm not good enough? Because anything that touches that is dirty, you know? So I would say negative thinking and gossip are two really big ones that I don't want to participate in.
You remind me of this parallel to addicts. Like you said, I didn't start at baseline at 0. I started at -20. And some of the most successful people came from a place of -20, whether that was mindset or how they were raised or an addiction. But because they had it so bad, like there's people that have it that it's just, life's not bad enough for them to do the things that it's going to make it great. But because it's so bad, they have to put in these practices, they have to put in these intentional ways of living that makes it so that they can be successful and function properly, or else they'll revert back to something that's so painful and so hurtful to themselves and other people.
That's very true. I think like most of what I have to say, a lot of my solutions come from a recovery practice, because I think like it's super clear to me that I'm an addict, and maybe that's why that's probably resonating with you, and like maybe you've like heard other people talk similarly, especially people who have like turned it around, and that's why, you know, my purpose, my why is to help entrepreneurs and addicts, because I identify with, you know, both groups, and I actually think they're tied together more than people think.
And I think that's one of the most, I think most entrepreneurs have some of the most obsessive, addictive personalities, and it's attempted to be tempered so much of a person's life. For me, it was like, I remember my mom wouldn't allow us to play video games. Like, it was on lockdown, nothing would ever happen. So I started going to bed at 7 p.m. and I'd wake up at 2 a.m., sneak down and play video games until 5 in the morning, and then just go into bed, and my alarm would go off at 6, and then I'd go to school until they caught me. And I think that personality trait, obviously that wasn't something that was serving me, but fueling that into something that does serve me, instead of trying to temper it and saying, don't be obsessive, don't be extreme, like that has never ever worked for me. It just had to be extreme and obsessive over those things that are going to add value to the world and to other people.
And I guess I'll add on to that is one of the realizations that I had to have is, what is addictive behavior? What are the characteristics of addictive behavior? And as I really dug into that, I came out with 3 characteristics that I identify as addictive behavior. And those 3 characteristics are: 1, urgency. Do I need to have it right now? 2 is compulsivity. Once I act on that behavior, do I continue to want to act on that behavior? And then 3 is obsessive. It comes in loop thoughts, meaning that's something that I want to act on. Oh, I set it aside. Oh, it's back again. I set it aside. Oh, it's back again. I set it aside. Oh, it's back again. And I've identified if anything that I want to do has those 3 characteristics, or even 1, I should really think about that before I do it. And that can happen in lots of ways, right? Like you said, from something as simple as video games, to eating, to sex, to working. You know, like when I first started this business and I had a corporate job, I was working from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. daily. It's not healthy, you know? So that was really important to me, to understand my behaviors a little bit more. And the only way that I could evolve was to identify the characteristics. And now I've got a framework to understand of things that I shouldn't be participating in and things that are really healthy for me to grow.
That is so self-aware, though. And it's extremely, just sitting back here and just hearing you say all of those things, I'm like, most people just don't break it down like that. Like, you broke it down and you understood how it works for you. Now you know how to act. Just most people are not like that. There was one thing that you mentioned earlier that really stood out to me about kind of on the same topic, but not at the same time. You said that sometimes the best thing I can do is to not do anything. And and because I don't have anything good to add, which is also extremely selfless though. Like we as leaders or entrepreneurs, you want to be a lot of entrepreneurs, they want to be involved in every single task of the business, have control over everything. What was the hardest thing that you had to let go? Like, okay, this person or this individual can do it better than me. I need to let it go. And how hard was it? Just
Yeah, I think the core of that question is the realization that if this thing fails, I'm going to be okay. And that took a really long time for me to understand. And once I was there, things got a little bit simpler. Okay, worst case scenario, it fails. File bankruptcy, start over. We're in a great country that I can file bankruptcy and try to start over. You know, it's a little bit scarier now with things on the line.
right.
But once I'd answered that question, I was like, okay, well, in the event that this thing doesn't fail, what do I need? And that was that I need a team that I can trust. And for the first time ever, I now have a team I can trust. And sometimes the best thing that I can do for them is not do anything, even when a huge mistake happens, you know, because they still happen all the time, is to let them dig their way out of it. Or else I'm always going to be the person fixing the problems. I'm always going to be the person to carry that load. So I think that's probably the best way to look at it for me, is like acceptance of failure. Because what really is failure, right? Oh, Lonny tried something and he tried really hard and it didn't work out. Like, if that, you know, I would rather hang out with that guy, you know, than someone who just couldn't, no matter what sacrifice they had to make, just couldn't let it go. So I think that's it, right? It's coming from a point of acceptance versus a point of something has to happen. And that's where my life changed from being a pushing mentality, right? Like I had to push everything over the finish line, to almost like allowing everything to come to me. And, you know, it's crazy what a change of perspective how that could change your life. Because that is not a way to build a business, to force it. You know, forcing something across the finish line is the most painful thing that I've ever experienced.
Could you have created what you created without forcing in the early stages?
It's a really good question.
Because I don't think I could have. Like the same thing, I was having this conversation recently. I said, by just pure grit and will, like I could will success into my business. I could just force it to happen. And then there comes a point where your business, like you can't go and fulfill 40 or 50 orders in a month by yourself. It's just not going to happen. And so there's a different strategic way that, and people leveraging way that you have to operate to do that. And then also this acceptance that I can now hand over the reins to this person and live with the consequences because I am placing my bet on this person. But can somebody get a company to $1 million without forcing it and pushing it there?
That, you know, I've thought about that question a lot. Like us being naive to that first million, that 0 to 1, right? Is that what got us there? And I would answer it with a different question, which is like, a lot of successful business owners who are now under their second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth venture, right? And when you look at those people and they start these new businesses, do you think that they're starting them from a place of willing it into existence? Or are they using those skills that they learned and now they're just able to build more sustainable businesses from the beginning?
I think you solve for something else on your second time around. So thinking about finalizing, getting all the I's dotted and the T's crossed in a new entity. Well, I talked to you. So started Aspen 7 years ago in 2017. It's doing great. Have a phenomenal team. Carlos is part of that team that's running and scaling Aspen. And then started another company, a software company that we raised capital for in June, and that company failed, gave the investors their money back, took a bath on 6 figures of losses, and I doing the retrospect on that, I wasn't willing to give it what it took to will it into existence. And now starting another company, I'm looking at it from the perspective of, can the business success be an outcome of working with people that I love, solving problems that are really, really interesting? And I think that that can be the case, but even with that, there's still going to be times like climbing a mountain, the blizzard's still going to hit, and I got to go out into the cold, and I got to save all the food, and like it's still going to be incredibly difficult and bitterly cold because that just happens. I don't know if that will go away, that need to force. But it's such a nuanced thing, and such a towing that line between forcing and accepting and allowing is really super nuanced.
Yeah, I think the way that I would answer that would be, does the business even need to exist? And if the business needs to exist, there's going to be some external draw to it. And that doesn't mean that the build won't be super hard. I think the part where at least I get wrong is the Lonny James that I originally started 8 years ago doesn't even exist today. So it didn't need to exist, right? Like I had to pivot so many times to get to this niche that we operate in now that has some sustainability. And so I think that's what my will and my force took me through, was like the pivots, to not give up when I had to change, you know? So I think most of the time where we start is not really where we end up anyway.
It's the beauty of the end. It's being incredibly gritty and allowing the changes to come, rolling with the punches. Or
maybe even the biggest thing is just the personal mindset of it. Like, hard things aren't as hard when I'm optimistic about them. Hard things are only really hard when they're not going well and I feel like it's going to fail. So,
Carlos, I want to give you room for any more questions before I have 2 final questions.
Go for it.
Okay, so you're on the Growth Podcast. I want to hear, what's your growth playbook from where you guys are at right now? How are you going to, I don't know what your growth goal is for 2024, but how are you going to do it? Like, what's the tactical way that you're going to go about generating and growing your business? Generating additional revenue and growing your business?
Yeah, we use a model called Traction. So if you're an entrepreneur in here and you haven't heard about Traction, definitely check that out. We just started implementing it. And one part about Traction that's really great is you're building your future plan to where you're going to go. And so you build it out to 10 years. And so what Lonny James is today is we're a house of brands. And essentially what we do is we create amazing experiences in boxes, and we ship those out all over the United States and all over the world. And our 10-year plan is we want to turn that to amazing experience, to that anything that we touch, when someone opens that box, they have a wow experience, right? Like if you're getting any of our brand's products, like you open that box and you're like, holy shit, right? Like something that brings out the feelings in you. And our 10-year plan is that from 10 years today, that we'll ship 1 million boxes that year. So that's our goal. And then like currently today, we're probably in that 250,000 range a year shipping out boxes. So that's our goal. And how we're going to get there is, first and foremost, like we're a firm believer now in the right people in the right seats. Like when you invest in people and you train them in and you get them going and then they're gone 90 days later, it's a huge blow to the business. And we've identified some leaders in our business that are the people who are going to get us to those places. And so by making sure the right people are in the right seats, we believe that we can get there. And from that point is we've been building out our internal playbook and processes, SOPs, those types of things. So not everything that we do isn't so custom, right? It's not like we're redoing everything the first time that we do it. We can actually have repeatable processes that will allow us to scale. And then we plan to acquire a couple more box companies. So if there are any companies that are kind of ready to hang their hat up, I'd love to hear from you. So currently our house of brands is Lonny James boxes. We sell gift boxes online for people with specialty diets. We also have Bunnywell, which is our corporate gifting division. So that's when a big enterprise company or any company above 50 employees wants to send really cool wellness boxes or snack boxes to their team. We also have Lonny James Retail, where we work with grocery retailers and we create really amazing customer experience boxes. So high spending customers like at Harmon's or Gelson's or Rayleigh's or any of those places can try new products and then purchase them back at the store. And then we also do fulfillment of gift boxes for gift box companies, right? We have our own fulfillment house, so a lot of them struggle with that. And then lastly, we just recently acquired Vegan Cuts, which is a vegan subscription box company. And what they do is they just provide an amazing trial experience for vegans. We have a beauty box, and then we have a snack box that goes along with that. So if it involves kitting boxes, we're interested in it. And we hope between all the brands to ship 1 million 10 years from now per year.
Dude, you're such a giant. Last question. You're sitting across from yourself 5 years ago. What do you tell yourself?
That's a really good question. And it probably depends on whatever mood I'm in that day. But I think the biggest thing is the gratitude for what I have at the moment, even 5 years ago, right? Like not a lot of people get to experience what it's like to build something that never existed before. And even though that's painful, is to like, there's a lot of grateful moments. And when moving so fast, sometimes I took those for granted. And so just to remember that, like, you're living a really cool life, something that not everybody gets to experience, and to have some gratitude for it.
Lonny James.
That's pretty amazing.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks, brother.
I learned so much, though. I'm like, I have a lot more questions for you, actually, but I know our time is up. But thank you for coming.
Of course.
Thanks, Lonny.